looked something up and it said absorption, and I think that's just right. And absorption maybe sounds a little bit less unpleasant. It sounds a little bit less tense if we're just absorbed in what we're doing. So, okay. Today we're doing intentional one thing at a time. Intentional one thing at a time. The first thing that we can do at this time is just come to our seat, and we'll sit in a way that's strong enough that we don't need to slump or worry about how we're sitting for the rest of the practice. You can just decide now, this is how I'm sitting. And also soft enough that we're actually comfortable. You can allow the body from the waist down to move down towards the ground. Maybe softening the lower back or belly helps. It doesn't hurt to soften the neck and shoulders too while we're at it. Just notice the structure of our body sitting right now, just for a moment. You can imagine we're noticing the outline of our body. And as we're noticing the outline of our body, we can notice if there's certain areas of the body that feel like they're pulling our attention more. For me, I'm naturally wanting to pay a lot of attention to my head and neck and shoulders. So noticing that, I can just softly correct and drop my attention downwards. Let's take a moment as we're starting practice to notice the space in front of us, to the front of our body. We might first notice the front side of our body only, our face, the front of our torso and arms, the top of our legs. And then the space beyond the front of our body, the space in front of us. And now we might notice the space to one side of us, doesn't matter which side. Noticing that side of the face, that shoulder, arm, that leg, that side of the torso. And the space beyond it. Let's notice the space behind us. Starting with the back of the head and the back itself. And the space behind us. And the right side. First noticing the body, then after a few moments noticing the space. Finally, we'll notice the space below us, starting with our seat and what we're actually sitting on, and the parts of our body that are under the rest of the body. And noticing the space below our seat. Ending with the very top of our heads and shoulders, the space above us. Moving beyond just the body. Practice today is very simple. Intentional, one thing at a time. That one thing at first will be the sound of the bell. And you can feel free to have a physical sense of the space, either in front of you or all around you, as you notice the sound of the bell. Continuing now to remain in your ears, remain listening, even when there's no sound of bell. Notice as you pay attention to sound, if there's something in your sense of hearing that exists both when you hear the bell and when you don't hear the bell. Being curious if there's something that doesn't move or doesn't change upon hearing the bell. Allowing sound to slip off of the ear, and also allowing any sense of not hearing a sound to slip off of your mind. imagining that you can watch your brain activate to each sound that comes and remain completely unmoved. Story of enlightenment of one of the beloved figures of Buddhist mythology. Guanyin or Kanon. Every day they practiced by the sea. Every morning when they woke up and everything was quiet about them, they would hear the sound of the tide coming in from afar, breaking the silence. After a while, the sound of the tide receded, and they would hear the silence restored. Then the sound of the tide came again, and again the silence was gone. Guanyin studied the coming and going of the sound of the tide and discovered that the two objects, the sound of the tide and the silence, were mutually exclusive. You couldn't hear both at once. Nonetheless, Guanyin perceived that they both had something in common. They both came and went. But the nature to hear was always present. The nature to hear enabled them to hear the sound of the incoming tide, but also to hear the silence. On your own, closing your practice slowly, taking your time. When you feel ready, you can come back with your body first, making some small movements, maybe noticing your breath. And coming back visually last. I mentioned this word, enlightenment, also. Can be a potentially very confusing word. I find it confusing, I will say. And I can't report to have any answers about it, but I can report to have been thinking about it recently and writing about it, and I'm going to make a post on the blog soon, and I'll send it out on the WhatsApp when I do. But I wanted to let everybody know. I'll probably finish that today or tomorrow. I'll be very curious to hear